Okay, so because a lot of people have asked, I'm just doing this Twitch stream really quick. A lot of people were wondering what the
Because a lot
best
of people
way
have asked, I'm just
to
doing this Twitch stream.
render out your scene is for posters or screenshots, for skins, what have you. Specifically, Thomas Soros is asking me about how to render out something in your scene for a poster, which means a high quality image. So what we're going to do is just to test, we're going to set up a really quick scene with a couple raptors doing something cool. So let's take a look here. So we're going to put our character in, and whenever we put a character in, we always type light into the search bar and click synthesize sh light and is character light environment so it lights properly. And in order for the shadow to not be low res, we're going to type fizz and plug in the physics asset. Cool. So I'm going to plug in the Raptors animation set. And I'll come in here to find a cool looking animation. Maybe the Raptor Snap, that one seems to be pretty cool looking. At 0.5588. So we're going to open it up. Skeletal mesh, animations, anim node sequence. Type it in, current time 0.5588. And now that we've done that, we're going to move around until we find a nice looking area. I always like this spot on docks. Probably move back a little bit and put them in a little bit of grass. I'm going to lower my grid size a little bit so I can position him a little more carefully. Rotate him around a little bit. No. Where's the sun? The sun's right there, so maybe look a little more this way. Bring that up a little bit. Okay, good. So that looks good. So right off the bat, if you just want to render out an image, a really easy way to do that is to simply play an editor. And when this finally loads up, you can pop into spectator mode. Open the console with the tilde key and type in toggle HUD. That'll get rid of the HUD. And then you can position yourself in the same place you were before. Maybe right about there. Looks pretty good. Now, when you're trying to do an up-close character shot like this, it's really important to, well, it's not important, but it's generally a good idea to lower the FOV. So if you open up the console, you can open up with the tilde key, or I like to press F7, which loads up a smaller console at the bottom, and type FOV, let's try 50. Now we're going to move back a little bit. This bush is in my way. Maybe FOV 60. Kind of move that back a little bit. And whenever you want to take a nice high quality image, you want to use the command called tiled shot. Now you can use shot, which will just render out a normal screenshot. But that's just going to be whatever the current resolution of your game window is. And right now, when you have play an editor open, I think it's usually a resolution like 1886 by 1012, something weird like that. And that's a resolution you probably don't want to work with. So what I like to do is I like to use tiled shot, So now that I've done that, let me... for the record, these screenshots will always be in Primal Carnage Game, Screenshots, Win64. And I have way too many screenshots here. They'll come in BMP format, which is completely uncompressed. I would never use that for any actual sharing purposes. So when I typed in the shot command, this is the file that I got right here, and the resolution... Yeah, here's that weird resolution I was telling you about. But the aspect ratio 16:9 is still going to be the same at least, so if you wanted to resize it to 1280 or whatever, that'll still remain consistent. But if you render it out with the shot command, it'll come out with the name screenshot and whatever number in the list it is. If you use a tiled shot, it'll come out under high-res screenshot. So the screenshot I just took is this one, I believe. So when you use a tiled shot, it comes out as a 4K image, and again, it came out with that weird resolution. I'll show you how to get around that in a second. And if you compare the two, it's probably hard to see in a window like this. One obviously comes out, well actually I guess it's not so obvious. But they're definitely different in resolution. And if you're ever trying to render a picture for a poster or a promotional screenshot or anything like that, you want to start out with a high-res image and then you downscale it to something like 1920 by 1080. And the cool thing with tiled shot is you don't have to stop at 4K. You can go tiled shot 8 and render out an 8K image, because why not? It's 2016. So after your editor window shits itself for a couple minutes trying to render that out, give it a second. Alright, there we go. Open up that thing again. There it is. There it is, and the resolution is that ridiculous number. Very nice, very nice. So if you don't like working with that weird, resolution, the way to get around that is to actually load up your map in-game. So I'm going to quit out of this, and I'm going to save this as PC docs render test. Now you guys don't have this tool, but if you just launch the game normally, and if you're ever trying to launch the game normally, you can, oops, let me just, if you ever want to launch the game normally, what you do is you go into your Primal Carnage level editor, binaries, Win64, and you just double click on Primal Carnage game right here, and that'll start up the actual game. And once you've started up the actual game, and for the purposes of this test, I'm going to go into windowed mode so you can see it. You just open the utility, type open, PC, docs, render test. And when you're in-game and full screen and you do a tiled shot or a regular shot, it'll come out being the perfect 1920 by 1080 resolution or whatever multiple of that you've chosen with your tiled shot. But I'm not going to take another image. So you could stop there if you really wanted to, but there's a few things you can do to make your image come out looking a lot better. Firstly, this bush was in my way, so goodbye bush. So once you kind of have a vague idea of where your camera is going to sit while you're in the editor, so about maybe back here, There. You can add some minor depth of field to really make the character in the forefront of the shot pop. So we're going to do that by going to View, World Properties. Now depth of field is already enabled, but we're going to want to enable a bunch of the other settings. So we're going to tick on DOF focus distance, inner radius, max far, max near, blur kernel size, and fall off exponents. So immediately the entire background's blurred out. What you want to do is you want to set the distance to be pretty much right behind the raptor, as close as you can get it. So we're going to keep moving this back. Farther than that. Oh, too much. So if you mess with this fall off exponent here, if you take a look at the depth of field plane, let me see if I can make that look a little sharper. So the plane ends right there, but you notice it doesn't end in a crisp line. It kind of has this sort of blend between blurred and not blurred. And you can modify that blend with the exponents. So setting it to 1 makes it blend even further, and setting it to a higher number like 8 makes it far more defined. So if we up that to something like 32, we can very clearly see where the depth of field plane blurs out. And you don't want anything high like 32 because you don't want to be able to actually physically see the plane in your screenshot. So we're going to lower that back down to 4. So now that we have it pretty much behind the raptor, no, it's touching his tail, so 300 is a good distance, it looks like. We want to modify, first off, I usually like to set max near to 0. By setting max near to 0, it means there's never going to be any depth of field at the forefront of the shot, because sometimes a little bit of it leaks through. With max far, it's basically a multiplier of how much depth of field to apply to the scene. So if we set 0.5, only half of it, 0.75, a little bit more. I generally like to keep this at a 1 unless there's a good reason to lower it, because instead of getting a nice depth of field, you kind of get this weird blurry look in the background, and it doesn't look very good. So I'm going to set that back to a 1. But this is obviously way too blurry for our screenshot. You know, this you don't really get any of the background and the transition between the blurry background and here. It doesn't look very good. So you change that by going to DOF blur kernel size right here. So we're going to try setting that to a 4. That looks pretty good. Maybe even a little lower than that. And maybe lowering our fall off a little bit more, just so the transition between blurred and not blurred isn't as harsh. That looks pretty good. I'm actually going to lower that to a 2. And I'm pretty happy with that. So now that we've done that, we can go, after saving, back inside our map, and I'm just going to test this with Play in Editor again. If you don't want to mess with that crazy resolution, you can just play it in game. Toggle HUD. Excuse me. So now we're going to come in. We're going to lower our FOV again because that bush is gone. I'm going to try something lower like 50. Actually, maybe 55. So it looks like now that I'm seeing it in game, the depth of field is a little too strong. It's a little bit too close. So I'm going to go back out, bring up the world properties again, and I'm going to increase that inner radius to about 350. Actually, 200, 400. That's better. So you have two values here, and I forgot to tell you about them before and use them, and I'm using them now. When you have inner radius and distance, you can more finely control the blend on where it stops and starts blending. So 200, it starts at 400, or at 200, it starts to blend into depth of field, and at 400, it's completely depth of field. So we're going to try maybe 300 or 200 and 300. So maybe 150 and 250. 100, 200. So that looks a little bit better. Actually, I might even... Well, let's see how it looks in game first. So we're going to save again. Go to Spectator, toggle HUD. So there we go. That looks really good. So to show you the difference here, I'm going to first start by doing a shot, and then a tiled shot 4 for a 4K image, and then a tiled shot 8 for an 8K image. And again, wait for the editor to shit itself, or finish shitting itself. Good. Quit out. Go into our folder. So we're going to start with the shot. So our shot is 1920 by 1080, and as you can see, it looks just as blurred as it did in the image. We can still see the background rather well. The depth of field might be a little too strong for my liking, and our raptor pops in a lot more than it would otherwise. However, as Jurassic for Life is mentioning in the comments, whenever the intensity of the depth of field is based on your resolution. The higher the resolution, the less intense your depth of field will look. So if we keep this open, and we go back up, alright, so this one, that's the old one. So here's our tiled shot in a 4K image, and then here's our tiled shot in an 8K image. And you can see in the first one where it's just taking whatever your native resolution is, in this case like 17 whatever by whatever, it looks just like it did in the editor. When we look here in the 4K image, because it's such a higher resolution, you can hardly notice the blur at all. It's there slightly, but it's very hard to notice. And then if you look in the 8K image, it's almost non-existent. So you have to play around with this a little bit more. So we're going to go back in here, and we're actually going to up this blur. Instead of a 2, maybe 10. And I can very clearly see the transition there, so I'm going to lower that to a 50, 10. Maybe increase the fall off or decrease the fall off. That's not doing all that much, is it? Maybe increase that transition a little bit more. No? That'll be fine for now. It should look less noticeable when we take the screenshot. So we're going to go back in again. Do our toggle HUD. Come in. I'm going to lower my FOV again. Boost it up a little more. Kind of composite that a little bit so he's on the left side of the frame. About right there. And we're going to do a tiled shot 4. Yeah, that one right there, I think. Is that what I just took? Yeah, that's it. So here's how blurred it looked in the original, and here we can see the background is blurred, but only ever so slightly. It's very, very subtle, and you usually want this to be subtle. There's nothing more amateur looking than someone going crazy with the depth of field. And the background's blurred out, our raptor pops out a little more and looks nice and crisp. Everyone's happy. And if you want something a little stronger than that, you can of course go back in and increase this to maybe a 16, which might give us some more dramatic blur, depending on what your preference is. So we'll come back in here and scuba dive our way through the blurriness like we're a fish. Toggle HUD. You can also press up on the the arrow keys to enter in some past commands. Lower my FOV again. About there. Tiled shot 4. And there it is. I actually like that a little better. I think that's a much better blur. Not the greatest screenshot. I mean, there's probably a lot more interesting things you can do with it, but if you're trying to render out a poster, I recommend probably going up to 8K and just setting a really dramatic blur. Now, another thing you can do one of the problems with what I was just doing is, excuse me, every time I had to make an adjustment to the scene, which if you're trying to get a really perfect shot, you're probably going to have to make several adjustments. You don't want to keep, working on it, going in game, checking it out, come back, make some changes, open up the game again. You want to make sure you're in the same spot every single time, and you want to find that spot. So there's a good way to do that. I'm going to open up my Kismet. I'm just going to clear this stuff out because we don't need it. I'm going to go to New Event, Level Loaded. And I'm going to go to New Matinee. I'm going to do a new action. I believe it's Toggle Cinematic Mode. And for target, we want the target to be all players. So we're going to go to New Variable, Player, plug that into the target. And we're going to go to Loaded Invisible, Enable, and Loaded Invisible, Play. Now you don't want this to happen immediately. You want time to go into Spectator after everything comes up. So we're going to set a delay of 8 seconds. Once you've done that, double click on your Matinee. You want to go to New, Director Group, and then you can click this little button right here to add a camera actor. We're going to call it Camera. So when you have your camera actor, which is now right here, you can move it around if you want, though I don't recommend this. The best thing to do is while you have this selected, and this is very, very important, make sure this is selected, otherwise you're going to lose wherever you move it. This defines where the camera will be when the track starts, just like in the other video where that would define where the bracket would start and ends. The camera's never going to move, so we're only going to have one point in the movement track. So with that selected, we're going to click on Camera, this little camera icon right here, and now we can see everything from the view of the camera. And whenever we move around and uncheck, our camera is in the location it was before. So we're now going to move this wherever we want it. And we're also going to set our FOV here too. So under FOV angle, we're going to hit enter to add a keyframe, and we're going to set value 60. Click on the movement one again, move this around, find a nice little spot for it. And because we're doing it this way, we can set up our scene perfectly, as well as even manipulate the raptor a little bit if we want him to be in a slightly different location. Maybe we want him from that side. Maybe we want to change the time on the animation to a 1 and get something a little more dramatic coming from the raptor. Maybe we want him over here or whatever, but we're just going to... I actually kind of like him over here. Maybe away from the grass a little bit. Something a little closer up just so we get more of him in the scene. Gonna go even lower on my grid size to adjust him a little better. Once again, I'm going to move my camera, so I'm going to select the movement track and move him to about... Let's get that out of the way. Try to get that ground out of the shot. Center that out a little more. That looks pretty good. Select the raptor one more time. Kind of don't like where his tail is right now, so I'm going to modify the time a little bit more. 1.1 maybe. 1.2. 1.8. 7. That'll be fine. I'm not going to get picky. So now that we've done that, and we like our location, under Director Group, we want to set the camera that we're currently using by hitting Enter. And so now, whenever this matinee plays, the Director Group will always set this camera to be here. Now let's say you wanted to take multiple screenshots in one go. Well, you could do that if you want to. We could create another camera. We're going to call this Camera 2. I'm going to click on the movement track and press the camera button. I'm going to also set the FOV to, I don't know, 60 again. Movement. Maybe we want a shot of him from this angle right about there. Maybe a little more of a close-up shot. Out there, that looks pretty good. I also recommend setting the length of your matinee to be significantly longer. If you only have 5 seconds, then that means you got to quickly just sit there, be ready to take your shot as quick as you can, and you want to make sure you give yourself plenty of time. So I've set it to 15 seconds. And now we have 2 cameras. So under Director, we're going to go in the middle at 7.5, hit Enter, and enter Camera 2. So now, if we click on the Camera Director group, it'll show us what will happen at the different times of the track. So when the track moves from Camera 1 to Camera 2, it'll switch between the 2 cameras. And so you can kind of have a little photo shoot with your raptor here. So now that we've done that, we can come in and make some more micro adjustments to our scene if we want to. You know, maybe we want to move the depth of field back ever so slightly, get his tail out there a little more. Maybe we want to increase the depth of field a little bit. Maybe we even want to change some other things. Maybe we want the scene to be a little more desaturated to get a more filmic look. Maybe we want to add a little bit of green to the scene or some red to the scene. Colorize might actually be better for that. And there's plenty of green, maybe a little bit of blue. Looks pretty nice. I don't think there's anything else here I really want to modify. And finally, one last thing you can do if we go out of director mode is you can also set, double-clicking on this camera actor here. Let's say you want one camera to have this sort of filmic look and you want the other camera to just be basic, no post-processing edits at all. What you can do is you can go to Cam Override Post-Process and set it to a 1. And anything you change here will change for this camera only. So if we go to Scene Colorize and we set it to 2, look how colorful that is. When you go from the camera mode to not camera mode, we have different forms of post-processing. For the record, if you're ever trying to get a crazy overexposed look like that, I recommend using tone mapping, not Scene Colorize, just because that's kind of ridiculous. So just to show the difference, I'm going to go 2 on tone mapping in the camera actor. So the 2 will show different results. In addition to that, if you want to really go for the cinematic look, you can kind of add some black bars by changing the aspect ratio here to maybe, I don't know, 2.5 or maybe a 2.3. And you'll get some of those nice black bars like you see in the movies. When you have the black bars, you can even make some more adjustments just to get the raptor lining up with the 2. And our other camera doesn't have it, so we go from black bars to no black bars. So now that we've done that, we're going to close out of Matinee and we're going to save the map. And once again, if you've forgotten, we have our Kismet set up to where the level loads. After 8 seconds, we toggle cinematic mode, which gets rid of the HUD and everything automatically, and we play the Matinee at the exact same time. So once the map starts up, everything's going to look really blurry again. Something happened. Ah, right. Okay, I forgot about this. I make this mistake all the time. Make sure you don't. Every time you have a movement track or you create a new movement track, right-click and go to World Frame on both movement tracks. Do that every time. Otherwise, some very weird things happen, like our camera moved, like it did there. So now that we fixed that, I'm going to move my raptor back to where it's supposed to be. About right there. And for the other camera, we wanted something a little more up front, like this. Good. We're going to start up the map again. Zawalu asked about letterboxing. That is one thing you can call it. And for the record, when you're viewing your Matinee, without setting the aspect ratio like we did, you'll see these black bars on the side. Ignore these black bars. They will not show up in the game unless you actually lower the aspect ratio. So I'm going to start with the map again. So once the map starts up, you're going to be popped into here, click spectate quickly, hit F7 and type tiled shot 4 before the time runs out, and tiled shot 4 again when the camera changes. And if everything worked correctly, not Dropbox, Primal, screenshots 164, high res screenshots right here. Yep, there they are. So we got screenshot number 1, and it actually seems to have removed the black bars for some reason. That's awkward. I guess, I actually forgot about that. I guess don't use the aspect ratio tool or method when doing tiled shots. I guess just add that in post. But you can use, the aspect ratio to preview it in the editor so you can get your character lined up properly. This one, in fact, did not do that. But you can see that what we did worked. And because this one didn't get cut off, I'm going to use this one as an example. Open up my Photoshop, or you can use Paint or GIMP or whatever it is you use. We can take our high quality screenshot, and we're going to do 1920 by 1080, and here's our result. Nice, crisp, high quality image that we can actually share without killing people's internet. Let's see, render test Raptor. Maybe lower the quality a little bit so it's on a 1.6 meg image. About 1 megabyte's good. And I'll paste this into the stream so people can see it. And so that's it. That's all you really need to do to get a really nice high quality screenshot of your skin, your map, whether it's for posters or just showing to people. Tomorrow I'll probably be doing Kismet, Get to the Chopper, health boxes, stuff like that, because a lot of people have been asking for it. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one.